You can see how emotional she is about this. This is something more than just research. This is her life's work. This is her passion, and that's what great science and history professors do between Dr. Wynn and Angela. We're now going to move to a part of the program where we're actually going to talk to Cameron historians, actually. And we're going to have Gloria Pillar, Cameron High School class of 1965, who's a retired associate professor of English at Michigan State University and author of Who We Are, Cameron High School alumni, classes 1957 to 71, Nashville's last generation of segregated education. And her book will be in the lobby out there if you want to purchase a copy. Dr. Pillar.
First, I want to actually thank Vanderbilt University and Nashville Public Library, certainly Dr. Churchwell, who's done so much to bring this program to you. It's the same reason I felt compelled to write a book. This is history. This is our history. We want this to remain living history. My classmates and I are all senior citizens. We're not going to be here forever. This history must live on, and the way it lives on is in the telling and retelling. And not just for the sake of telling a story, but for making a difference, for remembering what's great about our history, and even what's terrible about our history, so that our young people might be guided, better guided. I know some things, thanks to JC and our website, about the history of Cameron, but I really want to talk about the soul of Cameron. And before I begin, I want to say, I could not presume to tell everybody, every Cameronite's story. I've made it clear in my book, this is my story. I think it's emblematic. I think an awful lot of Cameronites do relate. That is what I have come to understand and appreciate. But the building notwithstanding, which has been here since 1940, these grounds, these are hallowed grounds. This is special ground that I stand on. 60 years ago, when I was a junior at Cameron High School, I stood here for some occasion or another at a podium, and I can just see, it's not just whimsy, but I can just see parents and teachers and students and administrators and janitors and lunchroom ladies walking back and forth, and all of the activity and all of the lessons, especially the love lessons and the lessons of strength that we were taught here at Cameron High. So I've set my little timer so that I don't go over, but I just wanted to share that history. It's a very personal history for me, and what it has meant has been life-changing. Without Cameron High School, my life would have been different. Not as wonderful, not as fulfilling, not as satisfactory. I don't know how a young black woman from Atlanta, Georgia, and Nashville, Tennessee can spend 2 years at the University of Minnesota in graduate school in French and 7 years at the University of Chicago in English language and literature without having a great deal of confidence, a great deal of foundational support. That came from right here. That's where it was founded. That's where it's been grounded. And that's why I almost cry when I think about this school and what it has meant to me and to so many others. I wrote this book because who we are. This is who we are. I wanted to talk about who we are. When I came back after 40 years absence, after I had been swept off my feet by my handsome husband, I soon became, You can laugh. I soon became involved in the Alumni Association, and to just cut a story very short, I realized, I sensed that there were certain things about us that made us a rather unique group. Even among black people, our age had to do with it. And I thought, what are the forces that make us who we are? Of course, we're different people. We're unique people. We're individuals. But among the forces that factored most prominently, as far as I could see, were the city of Nashville, because Nashville is different from other southern cities in a number of ways, not least of which the fact that we have Tennessee State University, Meharry Medical College, Fisk University, places where young black kids could look and say, "Oh, wow, those are older students. They attend that school. Maybe I could." All right, small southern towns without that kind of inspiration don't necessarily engender that kind of thinking, that kind of possibility thinking that we were obliged, that we had. Another major force was the institution of segregation. I maintain that those of us who lived through segregation have a sort of low-grade PTSD, if you know what I mean, based on the horrible, inhumane system that was allowed and encouraged to flourish. My husband, for example, doesn't go into any building without knowing ingress and egress. The Louvre, you know how large that museum is? He doesn't go in unless he knows how he can go out. That's a terrible thing to say, but it's part of our legacy. There are other parts of our legacy from Cameron that I just want to mention. The other big factor in why we are who we are is this school right here, Cameron High School. Some people, I hope not many, would read my book and say, "Oh my goodness, she's idealized from the vantage point of 60 years. That is not true. I have idealized nothing. I speak from personal, visceral, heart-held feeling when I say that our teachers, Mrs. Millie Washington, we will never know everything she did for students. She made me a state typing champ. But the things she did for students, we only know because maybe one student told another student who told another student who told another student, but she and our cadre of teachers were so incredibly loving, supportive, challenging, demanding excellence of us. I'm reminded of Michelle Obama's words, "They go low, we go high." Well, the city and the public school system went low, real low. And we went high, the dignity, the morals. I don't know how they did it, but they built character building into whatever the discipline was. And that's part of the legacy that I so cherish. They instilled a love of learning in us. We had such deep support that we were able to feel like, well, the world may not be our oyster, but we can try, we can take a crack at it. We've got confidence. We're going to do as much as we can do. I know that's what this school did for me. And the love, I can't say enough about just the pure love. So as my time runs out, I just want to share that, yes, friends from other states have said, "Oh, we have an O.R. Jackson at my high school," or yes, there's a Mrs. Washington, a Mr. Leonard Morton was our band leader. Yeah, this school, it's emblematic, it's prototypical of so many Southern segregated schools of that era. I know that, but I gotta tell you, Cameron. But no, seriously, all across the South, schools like this, with leadership like the kind of leadership we had, and the heart of our teachers and our parents and our community leaders who taught us to strive for everything we wanted, is what makes us who we are today. And we have our ancestors to thank for that. I never want us to forget that. Thank you.
Boy, that's phenomenal. Stories are very rich. It's hard to follow that, but knowing J.C. Cannon has fallen, I don't think there's going to be an issue here. J.C.'s Cameron High School class of '67. He is the current Cameron High School alumni leader, very much involved in maintaining and supporting the alumni room here that I hope many of you visited before we started the program. And in his career was as a federal investigator. J.C., can you come up and share some stories about Cameron High School luminaries? Thank you.
At Jiffy Lube, we car about cars. In fact, we're kind of obsessed.
Are you saying car?
And with things like our Carful vehicle review, you'll know we'll car for your car like we car for our own.
You mean care?
Exactly. Jiffy Lube, car more.
Welcome to Checkers and Rallies.
Yeah, I'll have the new barbecue spicy chicken sandwich and the barbecue chicken bites.
Sure, and with fries and a drink, that'll be $5.
For real?
For real.
Drift into Checkers and Rallies and get the new T-Pain for Real meal, where you can get this or this for just $5.
T-Pain. For real?
For real.
Only at Checkers and Rallies.
Just go forward, slide forward.
All right, please slide forward. I have only a few minutes to talk about the wonderful people that Cameron High School has graduated here. My first superhuman was Dr. Harry Beeman. Dr. Harry Beeman. I need to say that slowly. A graduate of 1960. He received many. Oh, yes, please advance the slide. Yes, that's him. Now I made the slide. Yes, Dr. Harry Beeman. And he got specialist in education in 1974. His doctorate of education, 1979, from George Peabody College. And he's professor of human and sports science at Tennessee State. Yes, he was a book man, but also he was a basketball official for 31 years, up and down this darn court for 31 years. That's amazing, ladies and gentlemen, amazing. And to top it off, he was the first black to officiate a SEC basketball game in 1972. I hope he gets the accolades for this. Not like Perry Wallace, it took for a decade or two for them to recognize that he was the first African American in the in the SEC. So I hope he gets it. But of all the things that Dr. Harry Beeman did, the reason why I'm up here is because of Dr. Harry Beeman. Dr. Harry Beeman and a few of his partners got together in 1986. They looked around and they thought about it and they said, look, Cameron doesn't have an alumni. We need to get one. Those young men devised a plan, created a mission. Voila, up comes the Cameron High School Alumni Association, 1986. We've been going strong ever since, 37 years. The main mission was to give a scholarship every year to a descendant of Cameron. So you had to touch this holy ground in order to get that scholarship. Ladies and gentlemen, we have given away over $175,000. You got to remember that they phased out Cameron in '71 as far as the high school. So every nickel and dime that we had just to beg for, to pray for, to ask over and over again, ladies and gentlemen, we never stopped. They devised a special recognition called the lifetime membership. $100 is all it took. $100 and you can become a Cameron lifetime member. That's special, man. That's like a badge of honor. You could vote in the elections. You could get a newsletter. I mean, you were just privileged just to get so much when you gave so little, but it was worth every dime. So it's a lot of y'all out there that are not lifetime members, but that's okay. Because see, I know who you are. We have a web page, an internet web page that's been started years ago. We also have a Facebook web page that has over 1,000 young people, Cameronites, that have registered. We'd like to thank a young lady by the name of Deborah Pullen, Washington, for starting. She was out of the class of 1971. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for Dr. Harry Beeman. Now let's talk about some beauty. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some beauty. Look at her. Isn't she beautiful, ladies and gentlemen? Her name is Sandra Bass, 1968 graduate. God, look at her. Skinny. Can you imagine her being a model? Look at her. But that's what she wanted to be. In high school, they called her Twiggy. I mean, you could turn her sideways and this pole's bigger than she was. You walk right past her. But she never gave up on her dream. She went to California, worked at it. She said there was many occasions that she worked for free. $5 was a lot of money, but she didn't want to give up. And then it was proven if you continue trying, God will step in. One day, it was this famous designer, Hubert da Vinci. He was looking for someone to wear his clothes. Couldn't find anybody because it wouldn't fit. But they found this girl who wore a size 0. I never heard of a size 0. That's nothing. That was Sandra Bass. She was a size 0. They met, and she became a supermodel ever since. Determination would always get you someplace. Now let's talk about somebody. Next slide, please. Well, Jimmy Webb, we know him as James Webb. Look at him. He's only this tall. Well, it could be a little taller. As you see, he's surrounded by police officers. 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King chose Jimmy at age 16 to lead a Selma March. And most of the people that was in the Selma March got turned around. But Jimmy's little crew got through. And look at him. Poised, self-confident, but they gave that young man hell. The officer name was Crocker. And James Webb said, "We want to go to the courthouse." Crocker said, "Courthouse closed." Then Jimmy said, "Well, we just want to go down there and pray." "Well, if you want to pray, go where you come from and pray with your little niggers friends." That's how he talked to Jimmy. Jimmy didn't break a smile. He told him still how he wanted to pray for him. Didn't do no good. The man's mind was made up to stop Jimmy. Jimmy went on to say, look, if I had a quarter and you had a quarter, would your quarter be worth more than mine? And somebody in the audience said, you can take your quarter and buy you a fish sandwich. And Jimmy, the first time I saw him break, but he never lost composure. James Jimmy Webb led that march. Thank you. Next slide, please. Look at this elegant young man. Class of 67, Jesse Russell. You know, sometimes it pays to know some students to sit beside you. One day it may pay off. We got a young man here who's going to speak named Alexander Core. He knows him pretty good. But let's make a long story short. Graduated in 67, in my year. Went to Tennessee State, majored in engineering, got out, and he became the first black African-American AT&T Bell Laboratories ever hired. The first black. First black. From Cameron High School. To make a long story short, Jimmy invented Jesse invented the digital cellular-based station. This gave everybody the ability to use a cell phone to call people and make it affordable. See, back then they only had those car phones, and everybody couldn't afford a car phone. But Jesse Russell, he's a multimillionaire, and he still don't know me. This young lady's not up there, but she's on the walls in Nashville. Elizabeth Ray Duff, first black bus driver in Nashville. You may have saw her on the news. She's not up there, but they named the bus station after her. She was also in my class. Elizabeth Ray. Oh, God. And now, before I go on, I would like for all of the board to stand up, past and present, for a brief moment to get acknowledgement. Would the Cameron High School board, past and present, please stand up. Thank you. For it wasn't for you, we couldn't do our job. And the next one. Let me sit down and get some water. I want you to look at that card, because this is very special. A lot of us have forgotten about the Vietnam War. Oh, I'm sorry, go with you. A lot of us have forgotten about the Vietnam War. They forgot about the young people that risked their lives. Let me go down this list. Henry Patton, killed January 3rd, 1968. Raymond Jordan, killed 3/23/68. Kenny Bradley, my classmate, 68. Yancey Smith, 68. James Russell, 68. John Barbee, 68. James Morgan, 68. How in the hell can statistics, this little black school in Nashville, have these 7 men killed in the same month? You tell me, and I'll tell you that's impossible, but this is not, because it happened. When they ran out of young men to draft, America decided to go into the safe haven that we thought we had when we go into college. No, we thought it was a safe haven. But what we found out is that a memo came out Because see, they needed some more people, some more pawns. They needed some other bodies to have shot at or killed, and they were running out. So let's go into these colleges and pull these kids out whose grades was insufficient. See, we don't always get the memo on time. I'm assuming that others got this same memo a lot earlier, so they had the opportunity to change some grades, to find a way to make my D a C minus. But when we got it, we were locked in, and that's all it took. So instead of a lot of us going to the Army, some of us decided to go somewhere else because life is very important. I've got one young man, I'm gonna skip because I need to skip through, so give me a minute because he's not on the list. He's on the list, but he's further down. But I would like to bring up Reverend Kerry Carter. He was one of the ones that decided not to allow them to go into the Army. He decided that he wanted to make his own world. He decided that he wanted to live and become somebody. Reverend Kerry Carter, my good friend.
Thank you. I'd like to say to Dr. Churchwell, I'm a minister, but I got your drift, and I will comply. I appreciate James so much. Only James could get me to put on a uniform that I retired in 30 plus years ago. And I'll be brief because I'm afraid these buttons might pop off and hit somebody. Amen. But so I am Chief Master Sergeant, retired Curry Carter from the United States Air Force. I lived right across the street in the Tony Sudican projects. Came here to Cameron High School, and from that time I went to TSU, but I must admit I did not have the academic discipline that was required, so I spent more time in the student union building, the sub, than in my books. Consequently, they had this deferment system, which I did not know about. I was a 2A, but because of my academics were not where they should be, I was changed to 1A, which means that your draft notice was right around the corner, which put me in the category that James has just described to us. And I went home and told my mom, I said, well, I didn't do good at TSU. I'm going to get drafted. But Mom was a very wise mother. How many are thankful for wise mothers? And she told me, perhaps you should go to the Air Force because you don't have the temperament to get in foxholes and all that kind of stuff. You're the more kind of book person. And she was right. I ended up staying in the Air Force for 23 years. But had I known about the military deferment, James, I probably would have studied just a little harder to bring my grades up. But I'm just laughing and grinning in the sub. And as a result, the draft notice came. But so I went on to the military, and it was a blessing. I enjoyed the military. But one thing I did notice when I was here at Cameron as a student, the textbooks that we received were used by, have I got a witness out here, from other school systems. Matter of fact, some of the books had the labels and they're so thick, you couldn't even close the books up because other schools in the district had used the books. Then we got, let's say, the leftovers. But I tell you, some of you all know the story in the Bible about the prodigal son. While I was in the Air Force, I came to myself and I began to use the training I received from Cameron. And while I was in there, I went on and received a master's degree in the Air Force, only to come back to Nashville in 1991, and I was employed by Nashville Public Schools as the textbook manager for 17 years. So my mind went back to those old books I got, and as I purchased books for the district, I must admit I was somewhat biased to Cameron, and I made sure Cameron got the best books along with the other schools. So this is great. This is great. So I'm a personal testimony here, amen, that everything really went well. I just wanted to share that. And like I said, I wasn't going to be long because I feel one of these buttons trying to come loose now.
Excuse me, I need to say one more thing, please. Oh, yeah.
You go ahead and say one
No, okay.
You go ahead, man.
I need to say one more thing. The young lady, Gloria Pillar, her book, all the proceeds, every penny has been donated to the Cameron High School alumni or our Jackson Scholarship Fund. Every penny. Thank you, Gloria.
Spectacular. I guess I know who's in charge here. It's JC. There you go. You know, Janae, you should have warned me about your uncle here, but that's okay. That's all right. I'll talk to you about that on Sunday. We're at the point of the program, we're going to listen to more of Cameron graduates and the stories here, and really, Curry just kicked this off. We're going to go down the list here and everybody share a few minutes of their story and the importance of Cameron. I'm going to start with Clarence White, Cameron High School class of 65, mathematics teacher, Metropolitan Public School System, and at Fisk University. Clarence.
Hello, everybody. Now, all of you people out there that are wagering that I'm gonna go over 5 minutes, you wrong. I got a secret weapon. Okay. For the people who know me, they know I'm long-winded. And they know that they've often told me that I do a whole lot of patting myself on the back. That's why my elbows are sore. So I couldn't be braggadocious like I am without the input, the guidance of the Cameron teachers. Now, it all started for me back in the 9th grade. I had a teacher, and I'm from a big family, lived in the Edge Hill Project, and my dad was a college graduate. He was a preacher, a Baptist preacher. And so I knew I couldn't come home with bad grades, so I just make a B, I'm okay. The teacher was so concerned about my being successful that he went and told my dad the following thing: this boy is lazy. And get him some glasses. I got contacts right now. And I made a B the first 6 weeks, but I made an A the rest of the year. I finished 3rd in the area math contest in Algebra 1. And the main thing about Mr. Turner's class was by the end of the 9th grade year, I knew exactly what I was meant to be. You see, in Mr. Turner's class, he saw that I caught it from what he gave in his lecture. Just like the speaker said before, we had some terrible books. and I listened, and I got.
At Bed Bath & Beyond, we believe home should always be your happy place. From rushed mornings to slow evenings, weekdays to holidays, home is where memories are made. That's why we've got everything you need to make your home extra comfy. And now that we're all online, you can save 24/7 on your bed, bath, kitchen, outdoor, and more to make your space your own. Shop now, save big, and find your happy place at bedbathandbeyond.com.
I got it, and I really didn't want to do any work. And so Mr. Turner made me do what they call be a peer tutor. And I've talked to this person. He doesn't mind if I tell his name. There was a student in class named Ronald Stanton. Ronald got into a lot of engineering out in California, and he couldn't handle algebra at all. And so I did some peer tutoring. And there are a couple of words I want to say. First of all, he said, oh, he got it. And for some reason, that did something for me, because I was always considered coming up a nerd. And when he said, oh, I realized I helped him to understand. And I said, hey, I could do real well with this and make some money out of this. I'm going to be a math teacher. Now, I have a few words. I'm not a man of a few words, but I got a few words for you. I'm definitely not a man of a few words. The few words I have for you are academics, awe, blessed, concepts, caring, knowledgeable, journalism, and mathematics. Well, what does that have to do with my speech? It describes me. You see, if you ask me what I'm doing right now, I'm lazy, I'm retired. But I taught math for 40 years in metro schools. Actually, I have won many awards, and I have helped other students to, and they were black students, by the way, to place in the area math contest. First at Bailey Middle School, at Austin P., and then at Wright Middle School. I taught 21 years in middle school and the last 19 in high school. I have some other things to say to you. First of all, when I got ready to graduate, mathematics wasn't the only thing that I had an opportunity to do. I could also have gone into journalism. And we did so much here at Cameron. Everybody talked about the flash that Cameron had. They talked about the band, which was outstanding and high stepping, the athletics, which was outstanding, but they never talked about the academics. I can tell you that we won so many academic contests here at Cameron. I know because I won 3 of them. And I'd just like to, and I'm going over, I know, I'd like to, y'all won, I can't do 5. I can't even pat myself on the back without all of the teachers that I'm standing on the shoulders of. I'd like to mention there was Mr. Turner. One of the smartest people I ever knew was Mr. Elliott, and then and he later became Dr. Elliott. He went to Ohio State and everything. All of the Cameron teachers I met were very knowledgeable. They were highly trained. They had to teach us because the books sucked. And so I cannot tell you about the 2 times that we started. Everybody said this was just for black schools. The first time we got integrated and went to integrated contest, I was a little disappointed. I came in 3rd in the algebra contest when it was just black schools, and that was out of 100 people. I went to the first integrated math contest, and it was held by Vanderbilt. And the fact of the matter is they had all these schools, MBA and all these people. And I'm sorry to say, I don't think I finished but 26th or 27th in geometry. Of course, that was the highest score that a black person scored at that time. Beat everybody from Pearl. And I was able to translate this I was able to translate this. And before I go, Cameron's math department was so good that I can name you 8 math teachers that all graduated from Cameron, and that's all I want to do, and I'll sit down. You had Carolyn Jenkins, the class of 63, Carolyn Jennings, rather. Mary Horner, the class of 63. James Key, the class of 64. Willie Francis Lewis, who was a professor of mathematics either at Oregon or Oregon State. Morgan Branch, myself, Kay and Faye Green. 7 different math teachers. What a math department Cameron had. Thank you.
Thank you there. Wow. All right. We're going to move along here, and we're going to hopefully, we're going to follow standard nautical time here. Hopefully that 5 minutes will actually be 5 minutes. Next we're going to hear from Kathleen Austin Davidson to share comments about her career. Kathy's finished the Cameron High School class in 1962. She's a retired architect here in town, phenomenal church member and friend and colleague.
Thank you. Excuse me while I get organized here. I'm a proud graduate of Cameron High School class of 62. I grew up in this area, South Nashville, only a few blocks from here, on Trimble, which is part of Trimble Bottom, that they changed the name to, and I didn't like it that they changed it to Chestnut Hill, but anyway. My parents, Clarence Austin and Julia Austin, also grew up in this area and remained here all of their lives. We lived on Trimble Street, and when everybody else was moving to Enchanted Hills or wherever, they stayed right on Trimble in the bottom for all their lives. But they also attended Cameron when it was located on 5th Avenue and before it became a high school. I think Cameron moved to this location. I think it's been mentioned that it moved here in 1940, 41. Both of my parents graduated from Pearl High School in the mid-1930s because that was the only high school for African Americans in all of Nashville at that time. My mother admonished me many times to enjoy my high school years. She said those years had been the most fun for her. Now that I look back on it, I think she was really trying to tell me that life after high school brings you a new reality. We had teachers at Cameron who realized the world was going to be the world we were going to face after graduation, and each had their own way of preparing us. All of the teachers dressed professionally, the women in dresses, our skirts and blouses, and the men in suits and ties every day. This was a subtle way that impressed upon us what it meant to look and act with proper decorum. Miss Hudson, one of our home economics teachers, would stand in the door of her classroom, leaning against the door frame with our arms folded, watching the students especially the girls, as they walked down the hall past her room during change of class. The girls did not like to walk past her because they knew she was going to be looking at them and might call you out and tell you if your skirt was too tight or too short. Mrs. Millie Washington, who's here, always looked young and petite and always seemed to have a big smile on her face like she has right now. Her appearance could make you think she was one of the students if you didn't look too closely. She always seemed to have a bunch of girls standing around her, and they were all laughing and talking. But I don't think that lessened their respect for her as their teacher. This was just the rapport that she had with them. Mrs. Prince was my 12th grade homeroom teacher. She was one of our teachers who had been teaching for a while. And as I was looking in the alumni room, I saw where she was teaching all the way up to like 1966. She was very matter of fact in her behavior. When I told my parents that she was my teacher, they could not believe she was still teaching because she had been one of their teachers. But again, perhaps she was devoted to preparing another generation for the future as long as she could. When we graduated in the spring of 1962, schools in Nashville were segregated, and Cameron was one of them. The Vietnamese War had been going on for 5 years, and many of the fellas in our class were afraid of being drafted. If you wanted to go to a movie showing at the Lowe's or Paramount movie theaters downtown, you had to walk down a dingy, narrow alley to the entrance, and once you were admitted, you were only allowed to sit in the balcony, which I never did because my parents would not allow me to go in the first place. You could not walk into most restaurants in this city and be seated for a meal. So this was just a glimpse of the world that awaited us upon graduation. We had fun at school, though. There was co-rec on Fridays right here in this boys' gym. Right. The boys and girls were able to dance together for 45 minutes or so. From time to time, there were talent shows. The participants were mostly singers. I remember once Freddie Carpenter and Norma Reese sang "The Way You Look Tonight." That was the first time I'd ever heard that song, and I still remember hearing them sing it to this day. There were pep rallies before big games, for example, a football game against Pearl. But the games were also excuses to get together with your friends and act silly for a couple of hours. There were no shopping malls to go to hang out. There were no McDonald's or Burger Kings to go to that I can remember. But there was Brown Barbecue, yes, which had 3 different locations over time. First was on Mallory Street, which is now Mildred Shute Avenue. Then there was First Avenue right across the street from Cameron. And then around the corner on Lafayette Street, which we call the Pike. I'm sure he was happy to see all of the students that would come in. Again, this is some of the fun that we had. There was no social media as we know it today. But lunch was the time when you could find out pretty much anything you wanted to know, like who was dating who, where parties were going to be on the weekend, who was going to what party and with who. You know, the important things. At lunch, all of the girls would tend to sit together. There might have been 1 or 2 boys who were brave enough to sit with them. The boys, especially the athletes, always seemed to have 3 or 4 milk cartons lined up across the front of their trays as they left the food line in the cafeteria to look where their buddies were. You either walked or rode the school bus to school, or your parents dropped you off, because very few of us, if any, owned our cars back then. Our parents needed their car to get to work. That was another difference between then and now. Now school parking lots are filled with as many student cars as teachers' cars, or more. Well, my mom was right, as mothers tend to be a lot of the time. I loved high school. I loved my years at Cameron. I formed wonderful friendships at Cameron that remain dear friends today. Hail to the Cameron, amen, to the school that we love.
Thank you.
All right.
You did it.
That is great. I haven't heard Kathleen talk that long in 50 years. That's another story. Next on our list of Cameron alumni, we're going to have Thomas Pillow, class of 1964, mechanical engineer, and I think related to one of the prior speakers, right?
Yeah. I'll get to that point a little later. What have I heard? Okay, before I get started, just a couple of points I want to make. We talked about teachers. I won't call them particular names. But after leaving Cameron, I've sit in a lot of classes in graduate school, professionally, in different companies. And I'll be honest with you, I put our teachers toe-to-toe with any teachers I saw after leaving here. I believe we had some of the best teachers that could exist. So I just want to, hats off to all of our teachers. One in particular, I'll pick on Clarence White because my math teacher was Miss Ledette. And I love Miss Ledette because she overlooked all my faults. She was a great teacher. Anyway, I just want to mention her name because I thought she was really good. Okay, but I'm going to present the memorable events that illustrate how much Cameron and South Nashville influenced my life. And I picked out three. There's no way I can cover. Cameron was part of my life starting at the age of 6. I lived in Napier Projects, and I could look diagonally from Napier Projects, and I could see Cameron. I went to Napier Elementary School, first grade, but some of the older kids all went to Cameron. And like any young kid, you always wanted to bet where the big kids were. So starting at age 6, I knew I was coming to Cameron. And I eventually got here to 7th grade. But the first big event that happened to me after getting to Cameron was in the 9th grade. We had taken a better of aptitude test, and counselors call you in, they have this conference with you to discuss those grades. And she asked me, okay, when you graduate from high school, what do you want to be? And I had a limited view of the world and job occupations and opportunities. I told her I wanted to be an auto mechanic because I've always been fascinated with machines. And she says, well, you scored real well on mechanical aptitude and mathematics. Why don't you consider being a mechanical engineer? I stopped and I said, well, what's that? I had no idea. She says, again, best teachers in the world, counselor. She says, here's a good answer. She says, mechanical engineer is like being an auto mechanic, except they make more money. And I thought, I can do that. And that is literally where my career got started. A mechanical engineer advised from a student, guidance counselor. The problem was, when I left that discussion, I told some of my schoolmates that I was going to be an engineer. No smarter than I am, the same age, right? They told me that I couldn't be an engineer because I was black. That's the truth. And the problem is, I bought into that to some degree, not completely, but to some degree I was reluctant. I thought, well, it's 9th grade, and maybe, but between 9th, 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade, I had some anxiety about that whole concept. However, again, Cameron High School and the benefits, the 9th career conference that they had at the school occurred around March of my senior year of school. And what they did, they brought in professionals from different areas in different rooms. Where the room where they had the engineers were, I went to that room. The speaker that came in that room was Dr. James Parsons, head of the School of Engineering at Tennessee State. He was an engineer. He was also black. I sit in that room, talking about these career days and so forth. This is how important it is. I sit there and look, I don't know what he said. All I could get was, he's an engineer and he's black. Maybe I can be one too. And that's literally how I wound up in engineering in school. I'll go forward with that one because it was that was my life, the change event in my life. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples of experiences I had at Cameron. Some of them I kind of make fun of myself a little bit, but that's okay. I can get past that. My wife does it all the time. Okay. The first one was Dr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, in those days, he became Dr. Elliott. I had a chemistry class, and they required us to do science projects every year, which eventually the best ones, I don't know the point when this changed, but we got to go out to Vanderbilt for the regional contest. So I hated that assignment. I did not want to do it. I didn't have the tools. I had nothing required elements to do a senior class project. Anyway, I did it. And it didn't even stand up very well with my boards and so forth. However, no one was more surprised than I was that I won first prize in chemistry that year. The key to this is, though, the whole process required to do that project, I have used countless times as an actual engineer. Matter of fact, 2 of my job titles were project engineer. To this day, I still use some of the skills I learned in putting together that project. So as much as I hated it, the benefit that came from it is endless. It's still going on today. How about learning how to work under pressure? I'll give you a good example. Miss Elder came to me one day in class, got in her class. She says, Mr. Pillow, I had an overdue notebook. She says, if you don't have that notebook on my desk tomorrow, you're going to get an F. I had never got an F at that point in my life. I thought, F, worse than that, Mom and Daddy. I couldn't. That was the first time I ever did an all-nighter. I did an all-nighter. I turned in that notebook the next day. That's also when I learned how to work under pressure. And I have not lost that skill since. I did not get it. I don't know what my grade was, but I didn't get an F. So but that's a good example of how some of these experiences just carry through life. Reading an assignment. E.T. Carruthers, another one of our teachers. Any of you have literature people? He gives us the assignments, 16 British literature classics and so forth. I'm not sure I finished even half of those books. But guess what? He planted the seed, the literature seed in me. At the age of 40, I started reading those books. I've read every one that I can remember he ever assigned us, and a whole lot more than that. To this day, one of the greatest pleasures I have in life is sitting down late at night and reading those classics and those books. And I've got a bunch of them. So I just want to say, Steve was planning, even though I wasn't a great student in that class. I'm lucky I passed. But what he said and did in that class, and those who knew E.T., he had a passion for that stuff. And I felt it. The last one I want to reference is a program which we had a lot of here at Cameron, in the school auditorium. They had a guest speaker that came in here. This may ring a bell with some of these people. His name was A.G. Gaston. He was a millionaire from Birmingham, a black man. I had never known or met a millionaire my whole life. But the fact that man was a black man, I was mesmerized. And I'll tell you, he started speaking. To this day, I can probably quote you about half of his presentation. I can see his face. And over the years, up until this day in time, I still quote to myself in my mind some of the things he said that day. And some very good messages about how to grow wealth. I mean, he was a giant as far as I was concerned. What's the result of all that? My previous results, as a result of my time at Cameron, education. I was able, with my foundation, I was able to leave here, get a degree in mechanical engineering, and I did spend time in student union, so I did wind up in the Army for a couple of years before I really got that degree. A little detour. That's not bad. It sounds funny, but those kind of detours are educational life is experience. After that, I was able to go on and get a master's degree in business administration. Career-wise, I spent a lot of years working for Fortune 500 companies as an engineer. Also, I've spent over 40 years as a real estate investor. That's because from the master's degree and that background and that A.G. Gaston conversation. Because the idea of money has never escaped me. I've always loved money. I believe, as a result of being at Cameron, I have a strong desire to be a contributor to society. Just a couple of quick things I participated in. I can't do them all. I taught schools, elementary schools, young people on business principles, elementary engineering, and so forth. I volunteer at my church as a coordinator for a room in the inn. So that's the C. Hubbard coordinator over there. Things have been kind of slow since COVID. The other thing is, and the biggest one I want to get to is, I am a low-income provider of housing. Over the past 30 years, I've provided housing to over 200 families in low income. Now, I want to emphasize this. Most of these are Section 8 renters. Many landlords, if not most, will not rent to them. I do. And if you come to any one of my houses, I could live in one of my houses. I'm not a slumlord. These are decent, nice, decent housing for people to live in. I think my responsibility is to provide good, clean, healthy, safe housing for these families. Also, a lot of my renters are repeats. In other words, they moved out some years ago, called me because their experience was good. So I just want to pass that on. That's the most fulfilling piece of this that I want to say. Because when you can affect the quality of life for other people, not just yourself. If you just came here to get born, eat, and die, why did you show up? You need to do something for somebody else. Okay, and last but certainly not least, Cameron is where I met my wife. Aww. who continues to influence my life to this day. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Next, we're going to have, because she's been referenced so much, Millie Washington, Cameron High School teacher. I think went to junior high school at Cameron in 57, is that right? Did I get that wrong? You correct me. Says the teacher's going to correct me here, so I flunked that particular part of the test. There you go.
I'd like to thank Dr. Churchwell for inviting me to do this, and to let you know that tonight I represent both sides of the Cameron story, as a student and a teacher. I graduated along with my sister and maybe some others in the audience from Cameron Junior High School in 1947. So that means I'm really young, right? Yes. All right. When I try to remember those years, the one thing that stands out in my mind is my teachers. There are two of them that come to mind. One was Miss Grace D. Prince, who was an English teacher and didn't take any stuff when it came to grammar. And right today, I still have difficulty using the correct verb with plural nouns and singular nouns. So I have to call my sister to make sure I'm correct. Then the other teacher was Miss Eva B. Dorsey. She was the librarian. And she encouraged my sister and I to join the Girl Scouts. And that was okay. But what you may not know is the major fundraiser for Girl Scouts then and now was Girl Scout cookie sales. Okay? Now that presented a problem for us because it meant you had to solicit sales. My parents did not allow my sister and I to go beyond our block, especially knocking on doors. And there were very few houses on our block that we could knock on doors. So you know that when we reported back to Miss Dorsey, our sales were very, very, very small. But what she did was, when she called on the other girls to report what they had sold, we were sort of cringing, but she made us feel like that, I think it may have been like $3, was just as great as the others. She made us feel proud and she made us feel accepted. So you can imagine how I felt 12 years later to get a call from the personnel office that I was going to Cameron School as a teacher. There were two of us, Henry Beach and myself, and we were a little younger than the average teacher. When we interviewed with the principal, Mr. O.R. Jackson, the first thing he told us was he did not want us because he needed more experienced teachers for his students. So you
With Domino's Rewards, you can earn free Domino's after every 2 orders. It's as easy as 1, 2, free. Like free Parmesan bread bites, or a free stuffed cheesy bread, or a free medium 2-topping pizza, or even more. Free. Order now and start earning free Domino's today.
So you know about how we felt when we walked back to the bus stop, knowing that we were going to be working at a school where we were not wanted. But I came to realize that Mr. Jackson had his students at heart. He was concerned about them. And when I looked at an old Cameron yearbook not too long ago, I was surprised by the number of courses, productions that we put on, performing groups, organizations that Cameron School had. Mr. Jackson was a visionary who wanted his students prepared for the future. Our job as teachers was to get them ready. I can remember one time standing in the auditorium. He walked in the auditorium and was presiding at a program and called out a young boy sitting in the back of the room who was cutting up. Told him to get up, go to his office, and wait for him there. That same kind of attitude that he expressed then was what he expected us to do as teachers. I was blessed to have taught at Cameron for 10 years, from 1959 to 1969. And today, when I run across some of my former students, I am excited to see them, even though I may not be able to call their names, but it's always a joy for me to encounter them. But what I came to realize was that Cameron was not just a school, it was a family. And as a family, we came together from all parts of South Nashville. We used to call 12th Avenue the other part of South Nashville. But all of these years later, we are still together as one. I'm often invited to their reunions, their luncheons, and I try to honor that as best I can. But I always remember a line from our alma mater. There's a school we call our alma mater in a town way down in Tennessee. Through her halls have passed my sons and daughters, and true to that dear school, I'll always be. Hail to dear Cameron.
Thank you there, Ms. Boston. That is phenomenal. Going to have Cecil Beard, Cameron High School class of 71, whose his occupation has been in computer analyst for import and auto parts. Cecil. Cecil's going to talk a little bit about his life, but he's here with his partner in crime here, Andrew Marinus, who's the writer of the book Perry Wallace, Strong Inside, the great history of Perry Wallace. They're going to talk a little bit about the Cameron High School class, the TSAA championship team of 1970-71, as they bring this story to us.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Churchwell. It is a real honor and privilege to be here tonight. I think I could speak for all of us who didn't have the opportunity to attend Cameron that we wish we did after hearing all these stories tonight and learning this history, which is not just important Nashville history, important Black history, but important American history. When I was working on my book on Perry Wallace and the research for that, it became pretty obvious early on that Nashville in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s wasn't just the center of great Black academic institutions, but great Black athletics. And really was the center of Black basketball in the country during that period. When you think about the national championships that Tennessee A&I was winning in the NAIA in the 1950s, the championships that Pearl High School was winning in the 1960s, the fact that there was the National Black High School Basketball Tournament that took place in Nashville every year that brought the best Black players from around the South to our city. And then the elite basketball that was played here at Cameron High School, culminating with the state championships in 1970, in 1971. As you all know, the school won 55 games in a row during that period, which still to this day is the longest winning streak in Nashville basketball history. You were co-captains with David Vaughn, who was the TSSAA MVP in both 1970 and 1971, and you were coached by the great Ronald Lawson, who's a member of the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. And as we wrap this up, I just wanted to introduce my new friend, my good friend Cecil Beard, who's going to tell us about what it was like growing up, dreaming of playing here, and then having the opportunity to play basketball here at Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Churchwell, for inviting me to this historic occasion. There's so many things in my life that I'm truly grateful for. Growing up as a proud Cameron High Panther is definitely a highlight. I started here at Cameron in the 7th grade in 1968 and attended it all the way through the last graduating class in 71. I became an exceptional athlete, playing football, basketball, and also ran track. I'm so thankful for many community recognitions that I received over the years as an athlete at Cameron. I was honored to be inducted into the Metro School Hall of Fame. Thank you. Growing up in J.C. Napier Court was truly living in a village where everyone knew everybody. Not only did we have our parents raising us, but our friends' parents also looked after us. The friends I played with were the same friends we walked to school with every day. We never had to ride a school bus. If one of us got out of line at school, we paid the price at school and at home. Teachers and parents knew each other, had the same goal, which was for us to be successful. I had great mentors to look up to, like Bubba Coor and John Mack, who taught me how to play football. They got us involved in the sports and Boy Scout programs that they ran, along with Jerry Lawns. I'm sure a lot of you, other part of the South people know Jerry Lawns. Growing up, I loved attending church, community gatherings, and the block parties that we had on Cleveland Street that we would have. Everyone in the neighborhood would participate in food, bringing food, crafts, music, and prizes. It would be a great time for everybody to fellowship. Of course, there again, I had great mentors, Bubba Coor and John Mack and several others. Also, we had the Napier School Center that we called the Cracker Box. Anybody remember the Cracker Box? At the Cracker Box with Mr. Ray, I learned to play basketball along with my friend David Vaughn and Michael D. Monk Emerson, rest his soul. We continued to play together all through junior high, along with Freddie Lewis, bless his soul, and Ken Cooper. At Cameron, I played football for an exceptional team of strict and stern coaches. Coach Starnes and Coach Stevenson all taught us to be mentally tough on and off the field. My biggest mentor was Coach Ronnie Lawson, who installed in us the same playing philosophy that he learned as a player from Coach John Wooden at UCLA. He taught us the benefits of working hard, perseverance, commitment, and dignity. Our first year in high school, we only lost one basketball game. Most of the teams we played were taller and bigger, but we managed to beat these teams because we were well-conditioned and focused. That's how we won back-to-back state basketball championships in 1970 and 71. Our record of 55 wins with one loss still stands today. My philosophy in life was influenced by my grandmother, my mother, parents in the village, teachers and coaches. Learning from their teachings and with their support, I received several athletic scholarships. I accepted an offer at Fisk University to play football. I had a great athletic journey at Fisk that led me to being drafted into the NFL and placed in the University Hall of Fame. The influence of these special men and women showed me how to support the youth in my community. I have coached Little League, baseball, basketball, and football teams. Currently, I am an assistant scoutmaster with the Boy Scouts at Lake Providence Missionary Baptist Church. I'm also grateful to all the role models in my life from South Nashville who supplied me with resources and tools to make the right decisions so that I can be the man I am today. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful comments there. I'd like to have Ida Yvonne Curie, class of 1969. Yvonne has been a healthcare manager, underwriting specialist, and product development managing.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody.
Yes, honey. Zip. Play how you want, pay how you want.
I am Ida Vincent Curry, a proud graduate of the class of 1969. And yes, Miss Washington, I'm from the other part of South Nashville. I'm honored and humbled to stand here before you tonight. So my thanks go to J.C. Cannon, who asked me to participate. A special debt of gratitude goes to Dr. Andre Churchwell. This series, Then and Now, is his brainchild. So thank you for ensuring that our stories will live on in perpetuity. J.C. asked me to speak on our suspension from athletics in 1968. That was my junior year here at Cameron. This stemmed from a fight which ensued during the infamous basketball game between Cameron and Stratford high schools. While it was never proved that our students initiated the incident, which occurred after we lost the game, we were suspended for our entire senior year from all athletics. This historic moment in time became the catalyst for a documentary created and gifted to the class of '69 at our 50th reunion 5 years ago. This labor of love, thank you. This labor of love, as I titled it, is The Past is Prologue, by the way, which was our high school senior class motto. It chronicles the interviews from students and our teachers. Ms. Washington was one of them, as well, as they recall the events of that game. One of our illustrious teachers, as I mentioned, and a fan favorite is here with us today, Ms. Washington. I was privileged to serve as an executive producer on the documentary, along with Tanya Copeland Gray and Deborah Majors Bell, who were not able to be here with us tonight. Though peaceful protests were held, which included marching to the Board of Education as well as to the courthouse, the suspension was upheld. To this end, I began to realize that South Nashville youth of the 60s were not fearful of their protests or whether the outcome could have been dangerous. Rather, we united for what we felt to be right. I give kudos to the teachers who turned a blind eye, knowing we were leaving school for that purpose. Again, Ms. Washington was one of them. And we also give thanks to the late Reverend James Moon, the then leader of C. Hubbard, who selflessly allowed us to gather at the church to get our thing together so we could march. To all the students who marched bravely, and finally to our principal, none other like him, the late O.R. Jackson, who continued to lead his school with grace and dignity in spite of the outcome. I say thank you to all. Living and being educated in South Nashville was amazing, phenomenal, extraordinary. What a cozy cocoon in which to thrive. especially during those times. We left our parents and we came to school to our parents, and that meant an awful lot. And I'm proud to present to Dr. Churchwell a copy of our documentary DVD for your viewing pleasure. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you so much. We're going to hear now from Alexander Curry, Cameron High School class of 67. Role in life has been president and CEO of IT Solutions by Design Incorporated. Alexander.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexander Coor, child of South Nashville, okay? Life wasn't easy. Family stuck together. We worked hard. We paid the price. We missed out on a lot of things. But integrity, focus, determination is something we got a whole lot of. Now, I went to school with Jesse Russell. He's a millionaire. He brought new technology in. Went to school with J.C. Cannon, okay? And, but we competed. And we competed from day one, and we were good friends. I beat him in 50 yards. He blow past me 100 yards, okay? But that was the kind of competition that we faced every day. So when we walked out of Cameron, when we graduated, we were ready to take on anybody at any time and any moment. And it's still like that today. Okay, my career, I graduated from Tennessee State Electrical Engineering degree. Spent 21 years at IBM, all different types of jobs. Worked for the state of Tennessee, for the TBI. I was IT director for Tennessee Department of Labor. I worked for another 11 years with Hitachi Data Systems. I've been traveled around the world and received all kind of awards. But Nashville is the place that bore and bred me. I'm a fighter. After 37 years in the IT industry, I opened a company called IT Solutions by Design that allowed me to bring my expertise, talent, know-how as one of the top storage and SAN architect in the industry in 2009. I came back to Nashville, I opened my company. We had modest success. We should have had greater success because I brought industry experience to the masses. But a lot of things about Nashville have not changed, okay? There's still a lot of Jim Crow in Nashville. So after 9 years, I shuttered my business because I had to look after my mother, who was in the 90s, and I started to have a little health condition. But one thing I know, that this dog never gives up his fight. So after being discriminated by Metro Nashville and most of the corporations in the city who had minority suppliers that wouldn't even give me an interview with a resume that I had to top most of the IT directors in the city, I said, hell no. So I closed my business. I moped around for a little while, and I joined the NAACP, and Don Majors and I, from 2019 to 2021, raised hell in the city. The disparity study, Metro Nashville government and associated businesses in the city have discriminated against minorities since I was born. In 1999, they failed the disparity study. In 2008, they failed the disparity study. In 2018, they failed the disparity study. And we brought them to task. And in 2019, the Equal Opportunity, the EOB program, Equal Opportunity Procurement Program, was launched in Tennessee. Unanimous decision by all the council members. But you would think, after failing disparity tests 3 years, that the city would step up. Well, let me say this. They half-stepping then, they half-stepping now, okay? Now, I left in NAACP Economic Development Committee because I was fed up of supplying data and knowledge when we were not getting results. Until you sue the people that take away your rights and put them on the spotlight, they don't budge. So I moped around for a little while, and I decided to give my life a chance. I buried my mother in 21, and it took me some time to get over that. But now, I'm ready to go back to war. So, let me just say this here. When you come out of the Cameron, and you came through the class we came up, you're going to either cut mustard, or you're going to go somewhere else. And the friends I had, we depend on one another. We like brothers. One go down, the other will pop up. Now, the last story I'm going to say is my wife. Now, I invited her to the junior prom in the 11th grade. She said yes. But I had to trip a man to keep from getting to her and asking her first. But we've been together 51 years. She knows I'm emotional. She knows I don't play when it comes to integrity and the truth. And I tell my sons the same way. You vote or you can't come to my house. You show integrity or I don't want to see you. So people, that's what Cameron meant to me. It was the wind beneath my wings and our class motto, from here to greater heights. Thank you.
Boy, save the best for last. Save the best for last.
Powerful stories. Show the Cameron spirit, though. Last in our group is Ronnie Greer, Cameron High School class of 1969, and former Metro Nashville councilman. Ronnie.
Yes, sir, Mr. Greer.
Protocol having been set, he told you who I am. Cameron High School, what does it mean? South Nashville, what does it mean? I was in the class of 69, and Ida mentioned that we were a suspended class for 69. We did not have any athletics from March of 1968 until the football team started playing again in September of 1969. On that team with me was a guy named Oscar Haley, who was about 6'5", 6'6", and weighed about 275 pounds. Now, Oscar and I had grown up together, went to church together, so we all knew that if anybody was going to go play professional college football, Oscar had the size at that time to go. So he and I were already done butted up. He's going, I'm going with him. That didn't happen. Fast forward, I was given the opportunity, the blessing it was, to become the Metro Councilman for the 17th District, which included the other part of South Nashville. And for me, I represented the neighborhood I'd grown up in. My great-grandmother moved here from Smyrna, raised her family, started the raising of my family, so I count my years along Edge Hill in South Nashville to 140 years, back to my great-grandmother. From our school, from the Cameron High School, when they shut Cameron's doors in 1971, our teachers became the teachers of teachers. Mr. Leonard Morton became the director of music for Metro's public schools. There is a music teacher in every elementary school in Metro right now because Mr. Morton insisted that become the case. Miss Millie Washington said she left here in 1969 as her last teaching year, but guess what? She became the teacher of those who taught typing, business administration, excuse me, I stand corrected. But the point is, our teachers were just that great. They taught us, then they went to teach everybody else how that was done. Now, while I was in the Metro Council, Bird spoke to the problems we have in Nashville still today. As I was a member of the Retro Council, there were some newspaper reporters who were doing articles on the changing nature of South Nashville, the other part of South Nashville, because it started there first. They wrote articles that claimed that the new white people who had moved into our neighborhood were urban pioneers. Urban pioneers. So I asked a young lady who lived in the district and was a reporter for the Tennessee, and I said, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? She said, well, they came because they will come to save the neighborhood from the crack-infested neighborhood that it was. Anybody in here who lived or knew the other part of South Nashville, there was no crack-infested neighborhood. We had the same crack problem that every community in the nation had. In our neighborhood, the McKissicks lived on 15th and Edge Hill. They owned several homes on the block. If you don't know the McKissicks, they are one of the nation's largest engineering and construction firms. Dr. W.O. Smith lived on Villa, raised his children in South Nashville. He now has his monument stands at the corner of 8th and Edge Hill. It is called the W.O. Smith Community Music School, 40 years now and still going. The Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, who was the spiritual leader for the civil rights movement, those who worked in this town, lived on Caldwell Avenue. So we had in our neighborhood, when that lady said crack ghetto or pioneers, it pissed me off, excuse me. So I sent word back to the reporters for the Tennessean and the papers that if they ever made that statement again, certainly if they put it in print, they were not going to like anything that I would say. And because of my time on the council at that point, they knew that if I'm finna say something you ain't gonna like, you ain't gonna like it. And I don't care if you don't. But I close with this. Mr. Jackson chose our teachers. He vetted them. They had to be of the same mind that he had, okay? The auditorium, the dispute at the Municipal Auditorium, the Board of Education, the directors went to Mr. Jackson to tell him to tell his students to go home and sit down somewhere. Mr. Jackson, knowing his students and knowing what he had taught us, he could not tell us to go home and sit down because we were not doing anything wrong. We were just being disruptive, very peacefully being disruptive. So we were blessed to have those folk to teach us, to raise us, to bring us to this point. And I say this, my time in the council, that was my greatest achievement, I would think. But top that was one of our teachers was asked one day, or I introduced myself at a gathering where there were some teachers, and I told them I'm the councilman for the 17th district. And one of those teachers who was here with us said to the group, Ola G. Hudson is her name. She said to the group, and he has done us quite proud. With that, I know that I did what I was supposed to do for those 8 years. Cameron High School is the reason for it. I'm gonna call Ms. Washington's name because she is our love. That being said, if you're not registered to vote, get registered. If you're not voting, vote. If you know anybody who's not voting, bust them in their head. They have to vote. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. Some before me have mentioned that, the problems we had, segregated and doing those things, that was hard. I remember my father telling us, don't go past that block from the time I was 8, 9, 10 years old, because you might not come back from that block. Well, this election is worse for us, for this country, than the idea that I couldn't walk past Ackland Avenue for fear that white folk would get me over there and hang me by a tree. So if you're not registered to vote, please tell somebody. If you know somebody that has transportation, take them to the polls, because that's what we need to do. Thank you.
You are who I thought
you were. What a rich, diverse set of stories. It points to the magnificence of the teaching, education, experiences that these people have experienced during their time here at Cameron High School. There's nothing more for me to add to that other than saying thank you all for coming and sharing that with us. Yeah. especially Kathy Austin. This was really hard for her to do this. There you go. That's great. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This is the seventh of the series. We'll be continuing the series starting in December with some other great communities to talk about, to share, and to learn about their stories. I want to thank some people before we close. Once again, Rebecca Price. Rebecca's still here, our program coordinator for special projects. Spectacular that she really has been a great partner with me on this. And then from the Lead Public Schools leadership, Ricky Gibbs, Tony Majors, really thank you all. We couldn't have done this. Brianna Shelton, principal of Cameron Middle School. And Maggie Sneed, who I didn't talk about the first time, was principal of Lead Academy. Couldn't have done it without her. And then lastly, for all of these programs, they would not have been done and could not have been done without the help of Marla Robertson, my executive assistant. Marla, you still here? Raise your hand. Please, there she is. Could not do this. And then, as my great teacher, Willis Hurst, would tell me anytime he finished a major project, no Doretha Churchwell, who's my wife, no project for Andre. So there you go. So thank you, honey, for being here, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.